should be recording right now.
Loading video. And I heard my
Alright, I will save debate on that till,
Chat about that later.
Alright, guys. It's an Unearthly podcast. We're here for our series finale. We've got our usual cast here with myself, Randy, Matt, myself being Bill, Man in Black, whatever. Flynn's not here because...
Busy as usual, it seems.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about the name of the doctor.
He's gotten a downgrade to supporting cast.
By about this point, he's missed so many episodes.
About half, maybe more. Name of the doctor. I don't have a witty phrase there, so I guess the theme can take us along. Doctor Who. Yeah, things sure happened this week, huh?
Yeah, I'll say.
What was that?
I said things sure happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we want a summary for this?
Hopefully one that
was
doesn't
my
end with
summary.
flailing like a Muppet.
Okay, I think I can do a little better at this.
Okie doke.
We start off in Victorian London, where we deal with a prisoner being in a cell, and someone's being escorted to see them. The prisoner is basically like a cross between Lord Blackwood from the 2009 Sherlock Holmes movie and Renfield from Dracula. He's shaking in his cell and muttering him to himself, very similar to the Sagreus poem I mentioned a few podcasts back about the Whispering Ones. Who, of course, goes to see him is Doctor Who's very own equivalent of Sherlock Holmes, Lady Vastra.
Who in Doctor Who canon is the inspiration behind all Sherlock Holmes written adventures.
Apparently.
I'm sure that will be revised later, but...
As long as Moffat is the writer, that's canon.
That's the case, yes. Anyway, she comes to see him and asks why she's essentially there. He makes some very bizarre strains, and then, as she's about to leave, he decides to cut a deal. A deal about a secret the Doctor has, a secret so deep he'd take to his grave, and it is found.
It's kind of, he was trying to cut a deal before she even came in, but as she walked away, he finally said something that made her think of something other than killing him.
He also mentions one name, Trenzalore. Now, for those of you that recall, Trenzalore was brought up at the end of Season 6, which was way the hell back in 2011.
Yeah.
So it's really been about 2 years, pretty much, since we've heard Trenzalore. But that's what pretty much started the whole Doctor Who business we've had all season. So Vastra's very disturbed by this, so she decides to call a conference call. Conference call consists of her sidekick Jenny, Strax, River Song, of all people, and, of course, the current companion, Clara, which he did by sending her a note which got delivered to her 100 and some years later, where she lives. It knocked her into an unconscious state, and they're basically in a subconscious meeting in Dreamland. And they bring this information up. They also bring up the fact that that he has given her space-time coordinates, and River is very disturbed by this. How this guy got this information, we don't know. However, as they're mulling this over, Jenny realized she forgot to lock the door. And basically the Whispering Ones come in and kill her. River hurriedly wakes up Vastra and Strax so they can defend themselves from this, but they are both captured. Clara wakes up to find the Doctor there. And filling him in, he realizes where they have to go. He pulls the space-time coordinates from Clara, and off they go to Trenzalore. The TARDIS doesn't want to go there, because you see, Trenzalore is the Doctor's grave. And while they don't explain why, apparently going there crosses the Doctor's time stream in a big bad way. So we get to Trenzalore, and it is a huge battlefield cemetery. Basically take the ones from World War I and World War II in Europe and magnify it by a few thousand degrees, and that's Trenzalore.
With a giant police box.
With, yes, a giant freaking TARDIS police box there. It's not just a TARDIS police box, it's the TARDIS. Apparently old, dying, and losing its dimensioning properties.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why it's getting bigger.
Which just seems silly to me, but...
That's silly for a bunch of reasons I'll discuss later. Clara then sees River, who apparently left the line open from when they were doing their little psychic conversation. And noticing this distracts the Doctor to where she's looking, and he sees River Song's grave. Now, this can't be right, because we remember way the hell back in Season 4, where River Song actually died. That's right, she died when we first met her, and pretty much everything else has been her past. Isn't that fun, folks? Now, the Doctor, of course, also realizes that this can't be right. And as they're doing this, they're being distracted by, again, these Whispering Ones, which basically looks like guys in Victorian suits with no eyes and mouths. And very white skin. I have my own theories on this. I'll explain later. And River leads Clara into deducing that it's an actual hidden entranceway to the tomb. So the Doctor opens it up, and they go in, and they go for a little run. As they do, River explains to Clara that she's actually dead and is a memory stored in a computer, which is the end of the episode in Season 4. That hurries them along, and meanwhile, Vastra, Strax, wake up in the tomb and manage to revive Jenny. Pretty soon, they encounter what looks to be Dr. Simeon, but is actually in fact the Great Intelligence, who is the mastermind behind all this. He wants into the tomb and is using the others as bait to bring the Doctor, who of course promptly arrives. The Great Intelligence then proceeds to ask the Doctor a question, one that would let him into the TARDIS, and that is, of course, what is your name? The Doctor stammers and tries to not make that answer, and he threatens to kill the other three if he doesn't. As this debate is going on, River speaks the Doctor's name off camera so we don't hear it, and the TARDIS door opens. Reluctantly, the Doctor enters. Inside, we find the current console room, overgrown with weeds, kind of a la Portal 2.
Yeah.
And at the center of the console room, instead of the console, we have a big streaming beam of light with all these little lines and stuff around it. This is essentially what is supposed to happen to a Time Lord when he dies, according to this story. And it is the Doctor's timeline, from where it began on Gallifrey all the way through his end at Trenzalore. The Great Intelligence was its whole master plan. It was going to enter the time stream through that little rip and basically destroy every victory the Doctor's ever had. After some argument, he proceeds to do so. The stream grows red, and planets start disappearing, or stars start going out all over the universe. Jenny disappears, as she had been saved by the Doctor, and Strax suddenly reverts to his old Sontaran self. As the Doctor is twitching in agony on the floor as he's being physically rewritten, Clara realizes that this is what's happened. This is why the Doctor had seen her in the asylum for the Daleks, and why she was there in the Snowmen was the fact that it's her destiny to jump into the stream and set everything back to right. After some arguing, she proceeds to do so. Trigger a whole bunch of little flashbacks, and everything is reset. There's Strax, Vastra, Jenny, and the Doctor. But of course this isn't good enough for the Doctor, so he decides to go in after Clara. After actually kind of a heart-touching moment with River, he leaps into the time stream himself, which takes us to the end of the stream, inside the Doctor's head, with Clara landing there, being talked to by the Doctor, and as they look, they see a figure. Clara, who has seen every incarnation of the Doctor now, because she's been with the Doctor on every single one of his adventures, doesn't recognize him. The Doctor does, and wants to get away from him as soon as possible. When asked who he is, the Doctor says that it's himself. That the name he chose, the Doctor, is like a contract. And this is the one that broke the contract. That can no longer be called the Doctor. And cut to John Hurt as the Doctor, which will be upcoming in the anniversary special. I really miss anything?
Not particularly. Nothing major, at least.
Okay.
Managed to get through that without flailing like Muppets. Okay.
It's because I said anything that was going to.
I was biting my tongue pretty much every step of the way.
Yeah, just like literally going, Yep, that happens.
I was afraid to talk because I would go off on a rant about something.
I had a couple of asides, but that was about it. Anything in detail, I was going to go, I'll explain later. Which is kind of a Doctor catchphrase, especially if you've seen Curse of Fatal Death.
Curse of Fatal Death is a more official Doctor Who episode.
If Daleks have no bodies, why do they have seats on their spacecraft? I'll explain later. But yeah, I'm kind of a mixed opinion on this episode. There's a lot of this episode that I really, really don't like. I think it crosses some boundaries that really shouldn't have been crossed in Doctor Who. My inner child despises this episode with a passion because it does have one detail that I thought we should never see. And that's the fact that the Doctor does eventually die. I mean, yes, all things die, but, little kids really don't want to think about that.
And everybody knows who watched the 1996 movies knows that a Time Lord becomes a Yeerk when they die.
Becomes a what?
A Yeerk. And judging by the question, I take it you're not familiar with Animorphs.
No, it's not my field of expertise, no.
No, not even close, man. The only reason
I'm sure
I
somebody
wanted
in
to
the
see
audience...
that show is because of Tim Curry, but that's another story.
I never watched the show.
What happened in the movie was a bad misinterpretation of what happened to the Master in the very last episode of Doctor Who.
Didn't he just disappear with a dying world?
Yeah, while being mutated into a cheetah person by that same world.
Yeah. Pretty much going insane, but...
So that's why they had the eyes. However, the guy that was producing it saw the eyes and thought, snake eyes. Which is why he shows up as this big little plasma lizard thing.
If you ever watch a detailed analysis of that movie, it's pretty much they didn't understand, they didn't understand this. So here's the result. They didn't understand
the material.
This. It's like, Time Lord. That means he can see through time.
Actually, that's been kind of quasi-canonized.
Has it really?
Yeah, kind of on and off.
Yeah, Russell T. Davids mentions the fact that everything there is, everything that was, everything that will be, burns through the Doctor's head at all times. And drives him about half insane.
Which is why he acts crazy half the time anyways.
I always just wrote it off in my head as the 8th Doctor is more psychic than the other incarnations.
Which is also
so he
possible.
Can see someone's future that way.
Again, very possible, because every single Doctor seems to have his own little quirk.
Yeah.
Well, part of it, I always interpreted the fact that he knew history of Earth that well, that he heard a name and he knew what that person had accomplished, or what that person could have accomplished.
That's true.
Hints.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like in every adventure, the Doctor meets someone who he hadn't known who they were. So, well, not every adventure, but a lot of them. Speaking of which, wow! Now that I say that, I'm trying to think. I guess in Nightmare in Silver, the Doctor didn't really care whether Porridge was the Emperor or not, did he?
Not really.
But that really would have been a Doctor moment to turn around and be like, "Well, you're the Emperor, fix it." And everybody else just stand there open mouth.
Yeah, instead they give it to the older girl to show that she's actually a bit of a smart.
And instead makes everyone roll their eyes because, oh god.
So,
yeah.
Just in case anybody wasn't sure who wrote this episode, I have a checklist here of things to see if they happened in the episode. So, was there a catchphrase in this episode from an earlier point in the season that was misused?
Yes.
Yes. Does River know some?
Which one?
I don't know where I am.
State your resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does River know something the Doctor doesn't?
Yes.
Yes, the tomb, because apparently River has been to all of space and time.
Oh, actually, there's so many things that River does. Just from, the conference call when she's offered tea and she pulls it up and it's a glass of champagne.
Ugh.
That's pretty much she's ticking my Mary Sue boxes right there.
Yeah.
Tick, tick, tick.
Although, in the counter-argument to that, I love the fact that at the end of it, she's badgering the Doctor thinking he can't see her, and she basically goes to smack him, she thinks ethereally, and he turns around and grabs her hand.
See, and actually that's good because the whole time River and Clara were talking, I was sitting there like, isn't the Doctor psychic enough to realize that she's talking to somebody? Like, he should sense her presence just by his own natural talents. I mean, I understand the 11th Doctor has to headbutt people to get a message across, but still.
But yeah, so he was definitely playing it coy the entire time, and it took until she was about ready to snap before he went,
Yeah, but
my
thought is the fact that he took her by surprise there, and she had no idea how he did it. For the first time
main character.
In several appearances of River, the Doctor was able to get one up on her.
I think that's the first time that happened since the TARDIS exploded.
Pretty much.
Oh,
actually, it's the first time it's happened since we were dealing with young homicidal River trying to kill Hitler.
Yeah, true. Next thing on here. Can the Doctor's enemies inexplicably move across time and space with no explanation?
Without changing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So somehow it just walked from Victorian London to Trenzalore.
Which is either that or it's one really freaking long-term game plan by the Great Intelligence. Considering the fact that the question is, how did the Great Intelligence get back to Victorian London in any form? Considering it would have just gotten its butt kicked and was, reforming at that point.
Maybe that's how that particular version did come to be.
It really doesn't make sense, Matt.
I know it doesn't make sense, but I'm saying maybe that's it.
Here's how I see it with the Great Intelligence. His first appearance, Victorian London. Mm-hmm. Then he gets beaten by the Doctor. reforms, then there's the name of the Doctor. Then after he gets scattered into a million bits, that's when the Abominable Snowmen and Bells of St. John take place. It's the only way it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's still kind of a yeah.
Clara is called the Impossible Girl because she has to be in almost every episode.
Yep.
Strax calls somebody by the wrong gender.
Twice. Three
At
times.
least twice. I'm thinking twice, but
although I do
third
love
time.
the fact that they
That's right, he's still calling Jenny boy.
I do like the fact that they lampshaded that in a way.
Yeah.
And that's the fact that, River Song introduces herself to Clara for the first time, and Clara says, "Oh, yes, I've heard of you. I didn't realize you're a woman." And then Strax goes, "Neither did I." And just the fact that he's always, that was kind of... That was kind of a lampshading on that, which I just found kind of amusing.
And that's how you play Strax as a good joke.
Yes.
Bump, bump.
I just feel all the time he spent with Jenny and Vastra, and he doesn't realize that he still hasn't gotten the idea that Jenny's a girl yet. Well,
actually like how Strax was portrayed in this one. That's one of the things I do like about this episode.
Except for that part, I like it, but I still feel the amount of time they've spent together, that running joke should
have passed by now.
That dead horse needs to stop.
Either that or he's doing it deliberately just because it annoys them.
Which is also a possibility.
See, here's another thing about that, because I'm going to skip ahead on the list. Gay people exist, but aren't allowed to show PDA. And you can't say it's just Jenny and Vastra, because it happens in every episode of Moffat Writes. There's a gay person, but they're never allowed to show PDA.
Anything else on the checklist?
Yep. Something has a desktop theme that normally wouldn't.
The new
conversation
thing,
regardless of the fact that we never saw the old one.
Yeah. Apparently it's the Taj Mahal.
Yes.
Someone says Doctor Who in a way that wouldn't really make sense if the show's name wasn't Doctor Who.
Which has been a running annoyance with me since the end of the 6th season.
Yes, exactly. The Doctor's name is referenced, although it's kind of obvious considering the name of the episode.
The name of the episode, and it's been the recurring theme all season, or at least half season.
The Doctor crosses his own timeline. I feel like I don't need to explain that one any further, considering what happens here.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I would like to bring up, why was this such a big deal? The Doctor was dead. Pretty much your timeline ends on death.
Well, the whole thing was, if you're a time traveler, you can never visit your own grave. You would think that means there are paradoxes involved, especially, I forget who I was talking with, but I was discussing the fact a sonic screwdriver taken 15 minutes out of its own timeline creates a spark and pushes the versions of itself apart. A Time Lord, who apparently his grave is the most dangerous place in the universe because he's time traveled so much, can visit his own grave and no paradox whatsoever.
Well, the fact is that he is not supposed to be there. They imply that there's this huge earth-shattering paradox that should occur.
And it never does.
Nothing. No. But part of my question was, why was it implied in the first place?
Because crossing your own timeline is supposed to be a bad thing.
Yes, but his timeline would have ended by then. He's already dead.
Yeah.
You can't really change the fact that you're dead.
Crosses the TARDIS's timeline. Unless you call that completely dead.
It's really hard to tell at that, and that was part of what was also depressing me about this.
Now, that said, walking into a representation of your own timeline that's supposed to scatter things about your entire life and not having any problem, that I feel like there's something.
But mind you, that whole timeline scar thing is the biggest bunch of hooey that was in this episode.
Yeah. That's another thing.
I mean, why don't they just, find an untempered schism and throw them in there?
Or here's an even better idea. It would have
had about the same effect.
Here's the TARDIS, there's a dying TARDIS there. Why not, somebody opened a hole to the time vortex, and that's what they walked through.
That's what an untempered schism is.
Yeah. thought the Untempered Schism was specifically the one
That they refer to it
hole on
as
Galaxy.
the Untempered Schism, but
Yeah.
basically what it was a hole in time.
Mhm.
That remember the fact that Time Lords do have that infinite talent for pretension and pretentious naming. I'm surprised
Yeah.
it wasn't the Untempered Schism of Rassilon.
Right, right.
No kidding, right?
Somebody dies and comes back to life. This case being first Jenny, and then people pop up and down.
Although that was simple cardio resuscitation.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, yes.
Although I think it happened late enough that she should have been brain dead before she got brought back.
Depending on how much time there was that actually had passed.
Yeah.
As far as we know, they were put in some form of stasis, transported.
That's possible. And this isn't necessarily something on the checklist, but it's something that I kind of realized is something that has happened a lot with MoFat, and I'm pretty sure this episode fails the Bechdel test, or however you pronounce that name.
What test?
Bechdel, however you pronounce that properly.
What is the Bechdel test?
That is, there are two women who speak to each other about something other than a man in the episode. Pretty sure that doesn't happen.
As far as I'm aware.
Bechdel.
I see we're having more fun making phlegm noises than we are actually talking about the actual...
No, I've just never heard of this before, so it's kind of interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of it
I'm
either.
surprised. I'm
It's
surprised
a
that
test.
come up in your class.
According to Wikipedia, the Bechdel test is used to identify gender bias in fiction. A work passes the test if it features at least two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. The test was originally conceived for evaluating films, but has since been applied to other media. It's also known as the Bechdel-Wallace test, the Bechdel rule, Bechdel's law, or the Mo movie measure. And Wikipedia has a list of films that have passed or failed this test.
Huh. Blade Runner.
But that was, Randy, do you remember the link that I sent through Skype? It was probably a week or two ago that had the bar graphs on it.
I might not have looked at that.
It was comparing Russell T. Davies' fact that he almost always passes the Bechdel test versus the fact that MoFat fails it about 60% of the time.
What?
Like, it was specific, citing sources and such. Like, how many times each certain thing happened in an episode or whatnot.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And the problem is, though, that really, though, the two females that we're talking in here are, generally, the show can generally be doctor-centric.
That's the thing. We had four females in the episode, and every conversation they had was about either the doctor or the prisoner.
So
I feel like the Great Intelligence had a wider range of discussion than that, and he wasn't very wide-ranged at all.
yeah, the question is, although really, the River and Clara do pass the Bechdel test in here, because they have at least one conversation on how the hell that she's dead.
I like this picture. For those of you...
Oh no, that eventually comes around to the doctor too. Never mind.
Yeah.
For Randy, who's probably not watching the stream, I found a picture here of a huge sign in front of Big Ben saying, "We don't want to know the doctor's name."
You know what? I'm pretty sure that image has actually been around since the end of season 6.
Yes.
But it's still very much...
Yeah, but ever since they did that whole thing, and by the way, here's something that's actually going to tie into the episode. on the fields of Trenzalore when no one can lie or fail to answer. Yeah, great way to have some sort of consistency in what it means.
Yeah.
I love the way the doctor didn't lie or fail to answer.
Oh, he failed to answer.
I'm pretty sure he lied about something too, unless that was only in the TARDIS. I know he lied. I know he lied in the TARDIS. I feel like he lied on Trenzalore as well.
I did not actually spot any lying on Trenzalore. I was looking for it.
Of course, if no one can lie or fail to answer, then whoever set up that false River Songgrave lied, but we don't know when that was.
Yeah.
And now the interesting part is the other name for the field of Trenzalore is the Fall of the 11th. I'm wondering if Moffat still has one big holdout left and that Trenzalore is actually going to be the end of the 11th Doctor.
I still feel like this episode would have been a perfect last episode for Matt Smith. He could have stepped into his own time stream, been blown apart, regenerated, and come out the other end as a new Doctor.
And that would have been interesting. But not with Moffat.
Were there anything left on your checklist?
Nope, that was the whole list.
That's pretty much the whole list then. Yeah, and it hit pretty much every check. But
Now, if that was a drinking game,
power.
I would have been comatose by the end of the episode.
Hey, you would have been happier than most people who actually watched it.
And I watched it twice. Actually, I think we all watched it twice, right?
No, I only need once to tell you, oh god, it was boring. Until the end, in which case it was, oh god, this is stupid.
Rewatching it, I took it better than I did the first time, and partially because I think I knew what was coming, and thus it wasn't really a blow. It wasn't me sitting here watching the episode going, no!
See, the first time I watched the episode, it was like you're watching something that's supposed to make sense. You're trying to follow what linearly happened.
No, actually,
And
for me, it was
my
like
brain
watching
just
a
kept-
train wreck.
Well, but when you watch a train wreck, you're trying to figure out what's going on. And when the train, starts going through Escher designs on its way to the wreck, it boggles you and things snap in your head. The second time I watched the episode, my brain was more numb because I knew if I tried to understand what was going on, things would start snapping all over the place.
Mind you, the first 15 seconds of this episode, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be awesome. Because, of course, we had a flashback to Gallifrey. And I love it when they show Gallifrey.
Is that the first reference to the Doctor, like, specifically stealing the TARDIS with it already being broken? Not broken, but, right?
It was kind of a variance of what was supposed to happen. Basically,
I mean, it makes so much sense when you consider
we knew the fact that he had stolen it from a repair bay.
Okay, we knew it was from a repair bay?
Yes.
Where did we know that from?
I believe that was Fourth Doctor.
Yeah, it's somebody mentioned one time when the Doctor was telling the origin story. He mentioned he'd swiped it from a repair bay.
Which makes a lot of sense considering it had a faulty chameleon circuit and faulty direction traveling thing.
Or he might have not said repair, but he might have said swapped it while it was in for repair, something along those lines.
As a matter of fact, I believe he even further mentioned that they were actually planning to destroy it, and when he's like, no, zip, mine.
He might have. I don't know if that was canon or not.
And then I think
I
think
the part
that
about them planning to destroy that TARDIS was something that was
mentioned. It was definitely at the end of the lifespan of that model.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being mentioned that it was an antique before he was even born.
Yes.
Although depending on how far you get into the written Doctor Who stories, that becomes clearly not the case, but it depends on what you go into.
It is very interesting because the fact that as of the time of the Fourth Doctor, it is the only Type 40 TARDIS still in service.
I do kind of like the way that scene kind of ties into the arrogance of the Time Lords, because the Time Lords are, who would want to steal a faulty TARDIS? Whereas any one of the Doctor's enemies, if they could get their hands on a faulty TARDIS, would be all over it.
Oh yeah.
Well, mind you, the Master had like 3-4 of the suckers.
Well, okay, the Master wouldn't want to get his hands on a faulty TARDIS, but imagine if a
cyber
cyber
had the Type 60s and 80s, man.
Imagine if a cyber leader or a Dalek Supreme
Oh yeah, the Cybermen have tried to take over the TARDIS on at least 2 occasions.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of points to the arrogance of the Time Lords, where they're like, what, an extremely powerful, time traveling device that's faulty? Who would want that?
Raise hands. Entire room. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here.
We'd be traveling back through time and space to find Moffat so we could beat him over the head.
Well, that is true. I might be busy kicking Moffat in the Ghiblis at the moment.
I would go back to before he maybe I'd let him write curse. Maybe I would go back in time to around the area of time of season 3, season 4, and abscond with him, and he would never.
No, I would be going while he was writing the specials, and I would kind of basically flag Russell T Davies and kind of do an aside and go, yeah, Stephen Moffat as showrunner, not the best idea.
Well, no.
I mean, look at the stories he's already coming up with. Look at that thing. Read it carefully.
No, Silence in the Library was fine, Matt. His tenure during RTD's run, or his episodes during RTD's tenure were fine. He only did 2 a year, and he had the whole year to put his time into them.
I'm kind of in the minority, and I didn't like Silence in the Library just because, and honestly, it was because of River. Her attitude during that episode, I just couldn't stand it.
And yet, you could stand it when she got around to coming back in the Fifth Doctor, or in the fifth series.
I didn't like her in seasons 4 or 5. In season 6, it kind of depended on what was happening, whether I could stand her or not.
I couldn't stand her, period, in season 6, because I don't know, by that point her very existence was a bane-filled knife sticking into my ribs.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Romeo Moon is bringing up some nice little pointers in the chat right now. So she's asking if we didn't like the episode. I'm not sure if she means this episode or some of his other previous episodes. And yes, definitely Russell T Davies was the reason why Moffat's older stuff in the series might have been better.
I wouldn't say he was the reason, but
it could be a leading cause.
He was a better script, or he was a better editor.
Although Russell is on record as saying he never felt he never needed to edit any of Moffat's work. He is on record saying that. I don't know if it's just the fact that Moffat wrote better when he felt he had somebody higher up.
Or when he could
he felt he was performing for somebody else rather than trying to have to be clever on his own.
Or even, he could focus on writing one story rather than trying to outdo himself.
And I was actually going to say that too, is that he only had to focus on maybe 1 or 2 stories compared to focusing on working on an entire season, plus an extra show that's going to happen in a couple of months. You know?
Mm-hmm. Romeo Moon, since you have the question mark by season 4, I think you're not certain about that. Season 4 is Silence in the Library and
Forest of the Dead.
Forest of the Dead. And then season 5 is the first Moffat season.
Yeah. Yes. See, in the Forest of the Dead and the Silence in the Library, I didn't mind her. I felt there was something going on there, and it definitely hinted of something to happen soon in advance. But I didn't mind her yet. But then we get to the point where she should be developing, and she becomes more annoying. River Song.
No, I'm actually the opposite on Bill. I didn't mind River Song in the first one. I thought she was an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
yes, there seemed to be something that she knew more about what was going on because she was essentially from the Doctor's future. I did not know at that point that they were going to be doing their entire existence backwards or twisted like that.
Or that's what they thought for seasons 4 and 5, and then when season 6 came around,
That
they
kind
threw that flat out the
of
window.
launch-wise. I didn't really like the whole backwards concept. I thought it would be great to take a slice of somebody from the future and show it there. Just and then you'd meet the person and it would develop as per normal. It was kind of like a preview bite,
Yeah, and
or
I would say
reading the
that
epilogue of a story first.
I would also say that her spoilers quote didn't annoy me at first because, well, I guess she kept it more or less to one an episode when she was first there, but then she kept doing it every single episode and started even doing it multiple times, and that's when her spoilers
And
quote got annoying.
and
That's
the
kind
fact,
of when all of Moffat's catchphrases became annoying. When you started
Yeah.
hearing them constantly, everything is cool, everything is the impossible
and
girl.
the thing is that he uses so many catchphrases.
So freaking many. Silence.
No,
They didn't
I mean,
use "Silence Will Fall" in this episode, and I was kind of shocked and happy. And it actually kind of would have made sense if they did, though. So it would have actually been a better place for it than most of the places it was used.
yeah. The thing is, I mean, the 10th Doctor had two. He had "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry" and "Allons-y."
And he had what?
Okay, yeah,
I'm
that
paraphrasing.
really wasn't a catchphrase though.
He used it as one, though. I don't know if that was David or if that was Russell or if it was a combination, but he used it as one.
I think that was actually a reference to the Second Doctor, because he would sometimes do stuff like that too when it came to dialogue.
No, it wasn't what. It was that what. What?
Yeah.
What? It was that.
Yeah.
It was that what explanation what flat what.
Right. That's what I was paraphrasing it to be faster, but
Oh, yeah, I see. You did it faster. I'm like,
I didn't think he used that one enough to become a catchphrase.
yeah, he used it maybe a grand total of 3 times.
Yeah. It was anything. It was usually the finale ender,
Mm-hmm.
or it was used once in Time Crash.
Voyage of the Damned.
Once in the Runaway Bride, once at the beginning of Voyage of the Damned, and I think that was it.
And then Russell kind of snuck it into the last episode of Torchwood. But it wasn't the Doctor.
Yeah.
Arg.
I mean, the Ninth Doctor just had fantastic.
Which was fine. That was perfect. That's all we needed from him.
And really, it's actually that was a great Doctor line.
Unless you consider him referring to humans as apes to be a catchphrase.
No, I expect any Doctor to do that when they're pissed, really.
Yeah. That's an angry Doctor moment.
He did it to most of the new Doctors, or probably
He was angrier than most
Yeah,
Doctors.
that's what I mean. So you could almost, maybe a personality trait more than a catchphrase.
But then you had 10. He used fantastic a little at first, and then he kind of latched on to Allons-y. And actually, I think "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry" was pretty much an RTD writing standard. Because I think the Ninth Doctor used it a couple of times too. And it was used in Torchwood a few times
I know
as well.
Jack started to use it after he traveled with the Doctor. So you could kind of say that Jack learned it from the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that Allons-y is actually not a bad thing for a Doctor because he was noted in the first Doctor as being a fan of French.
So
And
then
French.
we get to the 11th Doctor. And we start out with Geronimo, said pretty much right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like one of either his first or second line, pretty much.
It's his first episode closer.
Yeah,
Which is the end of time.
right.
Goes
You know
in,
what?
then he gets the whole bow ties are cool, which then expands into blank is cool.
There was still not Ginger. I'm a girl. Geronimo.
Still not Ginger doesn't count because
I'm saying as far as the first 3 lines of that Doctor, I think we're still not Ginger. I'm a girl. Geronimo.
Mm-hmm.
there were a few others in
like
there.
that.
There were a few others in there. There was a whole rant that ended on Geronimo.
Francophile? What the hell?
Talking about being a lover of the French language, that would be a francophile.
Ah. Gotcha. Well, it was more than just language, but yeah, even the first Doctor was apparently crazy about the French. That's why he
Well,
liked visiting it.
the 10th Doctor had that fun thing with Alonzi because he always wanted to meet someone named Alonzo, and then he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then he set him up with Jack so that Jack could get over his post killed his grandson depression.
Post killed half his friends. Bit.
That too.
God. You
Well,
join
actually,
Torchwood. You join Torchwood. Your employee card has
actually,
an expiration date on it.
that particular week was his boyfriend and his grandson. I think that was pretty much the only fatalities Jack cared about.
And I think
that
somebody
week.
coming back from the dead only to die again, or was that the
season? That was the previous season.
That was previous
Okay.
seasons, yeah.
It's hard to tell. Corpses dropped like flies in Torchwood.
Well, remember, 2009, there were, 5 episodes of Doctor Who and 5 episodes of Torchwood. That's how you remember it. The short seasons happened together. Whatever RTD was doing that year.
And then in between we had Sarah Jane Adventures. God, I missed that show.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I missed that show.
It was aimed for kids, so it was a little lighter, and it didn't start the good, but it got better later on in the show.
Oh, they started cooking pretty quick.
Did they ever get rid of the Slovene? Because I'll start watching when they got rid of them.
They came back every now and again, but their performance was a lot better.
Oh yeah, it felt more natural in Sarah Jane.
Yeah, it felt more natural in Sarah Jane, and that they really kind of toned down the fart jokes.
Okay.
Yeah, they could pretty much
actually because
that was my main problem with the Slovene. Just that
I think they pretty much the Slovene pretty much stopped wearing the skin suits.
They got upgraded versions, yeah, and then they also stopped even using them at all.
Yeah, so when they'd show up, they'd just be Slovene as Slovene.
I don't understand why the Absorbaloff wasn't a Sarah Jane Adventures character.
Because that hadn't actually been fully written yet when they did the Absorbaloff, and the Blue Peter disclaimer said monster for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It was pretty much after they got handed the Absorbaloff, looked at each other and winced that they said, yeah, we're not letting Blue Peter do that again.
Basically, yeah.
If I haven't explained it before, for people that are listening, Blue Peter is a children's show. It's basically like the BBC equivalent of Captain Kangaroo or Blue's Clues, something like that. Only it's kind of like a children's talk show.
Now I'm trying to remember, they did like a special mini-sode for Blue Peter, but I'm trying to remember what it was about.
I think that Good as Gold?
Yeah, that was the title, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
It was kind of their Olympic special. Although it always hit me as being, why did they do this? As they already had done an Olympic special, only they had done it in 2006. And both of them revolved around the Olympic torch. Really, I mean, as it turned, it should have been eventually, Matt Smith taking the torch from David Tennant at that point.
Right.
I'm sorry, Sylvester McCoy has the perfect face for this episode right now.
Speaking of which, that segues into what I was going to say, which is, either this is going to be really long, or we should actually talk about the episode in question.
Yeah, I know. We got
sidetracked. So trailed off.
I think it's some of the really big things that we don't want to think about. We're kind of afraid to mention. So we should probably talk about some of those things.
Okay.
Ugh.
Issues with the episode. Flat out issues. Stuff that we think was wrong. I didn't really see continuity errors. I looked. I always look. I didn't.
Unless you count the whole paradox, lack thereof thing as...
No, I meant continuity as from previous episodes.
Oh, previous episode continuity. Well, the Translore thing that I mentioned was kind of
the Translore thing that you mentioned.
Yeah, like that's kind of a big one considering how much of a big deal it was supposed to be.
One of the things that is generally annoying to me is how the hell Madame Vastra knows so much about universal politics and things like that when she is supposed to be a Silurian who are from,
who may or may not have traveled with the Doctor for a few years. There's really no way to tell.
Maybe, but they've never really actually explained this.
It's
It's
Moffat.
a,
We're
it's a
never going
reoccurring
to get an
character that we
explanation.
have never actually gotten any explanation on backstory.
That's completely and totally Moffat. We will never get a
We, we
backstory.
know
That
she, we know she was a
sucks to have
Silurian. We know
backstories.
she hibernated for a few million years. She became friends with the Doctor, owed the Doctor a favor, and came to fight on Demon's Run.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
then,
we
of
really
course, was
don't
kind of
know.
his
We
babysitter for a few years.
Yeah, there's been no fleshing of the background of that character. And yes, that is trademark Moffat. What's wrong with Moffat? If Flynn was here, he'd say we don't need that information, and I'm kind of like, yes, we do.
Everyone that I talk to about writing says, yes, you do!
Um, Likewise, we have no really information on Strax other than what was revealed in the Demon's Run episode. The fact that he was a Suntaran general, he kind of did something the Doctor didn't like, he got punished for it, he had to become a nurse, and then he died and came back.
And we can guess he was probably brought back after he was half brain dead by that defibrillator gun thing that Strax likes to use.
Really, though, that gun itself is actually, if it was technology that Strax was given by Vastra, would make sense. The Silurians were experts on using energy via induction, which is without using wires or anything, wireless energy transfer. It was the entire point of the episode back in the Third Doctor era. So the fact that he has a defibrillator that he can use remotely makes sense to me.
Okay. So it's not to me. It's not the remotely. It's the fact that there doesn't seem to be any sort of time frame. They're just like, oh yeah, we dragged this person to another planet, let her sit on the ground for a few minutes, met back up, and then brought her back.
Yeah, there's some issue with that, but really, like I said, they're the fact that they were captured in 1890 something by a race of people that didn't really, or by a bunch of people which shouldn't really have had any technology to put them into stasis.
Right. Or any technology to travel from space in either.
Correct. So they either had some method of projecting them back in time and pulling them forward, or they put them on ice for, several thousand years. This is an error in Moffat's point because neither one really works well. How they got from X to Y is never explained.
Which again, we can repeat and repeat over and over again. Moffat, Moffat,
And
Moffat.
also, he kind of says that you can stretch through time in your dreams. Really? Really?
I was gonna let that one slide.
I'm not going to.
It was an eye roller. It was an eye roller for me, but I kind of took it in the way that you sometimes kind of take things in Doctor Who. I could suspend my disbelief on that one. Basically, was about it.
And how did this prisoner get all this little information
That's not a good
on
question.
where Transalore is and all this other stuff? Considering he was basically a common
You know what I would love to
Victorian
find
mass
out?
murderer.
I would love for him to turn out to be like, for him to be Glitz, having like been brought back in time by somebody driven insane, and have just happened to have this information that he was going to sell or something.
No, I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
I don't know who Glitz is,
Okay,
so...
would there be an explanation you'd rather?
Really, not much. I mean, the only thing I can think of is it was whispered to him by the whispering ones, which is basically Moffat saying, well, I can't use the silence anymore, so I'll use these guys. And apparently that they're all replaceable and can morph themselves to look like...
That kind of makes sense because they're all just
I'm
empty
wondering if they're
illusions.
basically, consciousness with an outer shape that's made out of the flesh.
It could be that. I was kind of thinking it was more like what you see of them is what the great intelligence is projecting into your mind, and otherwise they're just formless.
Well, if you think about it, if the Great Intelligence has gotten control of the flesh, that would actually make a lot of sense.
But then that whole thing with they seemed more ethereal. Like when Strax was fighting them, they seemed more like shades than
Again,
anything else.
yeah, we really have no idea on what they are, and this is
Yeah.
all theorizing.
Yeah, this is
Right.
all
Because again,
theorizing.
the bad guys aren't explained.
Because Moffat.
Because Moffat doesn't like to actually do anything like a technical explanation on why the bad guy works.
And
Or
when
even
he
why
does,
he
he
why
starts
he
breaking
does.
his rules quickly and easily.
Mm-hmm.
Snap. Angels.
I mean, as much as you don't like the Slovene, when Russell T Davies introduced as a Slovene in World War III and what was its predecessor?
It
Aliens in
was
London.
Aliens in
Boomtown.
London, World War III, and then Boomtown.
I'm not even worried about Boomtown. Just when he introduced them in those, we
Right.
got a quick summary on what the Slovene were.
Their strengths, their weaknesses, how to kill them, what they like to do.
Even the strength weaknesses, what to kill them, but where they came from and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, that too.
We had motive. We had mentality, and Moffat doesn't really like to add that to his to his villains. Like, as I mentioned in the Crimson Horror last week, we never really got why Mrs. whatever her name was doing all this, other than the fact
that was Gaddis, not Moffat, though.
Yeah, I know, but it's still a trademark of what goes on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just yeah, you can look back at Russell T Davies and stuff, and it's like every character actually freaking has a motive, villain or otherwise. What the hell, Russell? I mean, yeah, what's Russell was awesome, but what the hell, Moffat?
Yeah, you see, the thing is about
Moffat
Mark
did
Gatiss is he's basically like Moffat's lackey.
Yeah.
He's trying to do his best to be Moffat, but he's not quite there. Which, is kind of saying, I can't beat a limbo with a 4-foot height. Because Moffat's not setting the bar that low by his own mediocre standards for writing in the past 3 seasons. And Gatiss isn't even meeting those standards.
Yeah. Give us more Neil Gaiman. I want more Neil Gaiman.
If any of us ever want to get something signed by Gaddis or Moffat, we just better hope they don't listen to this episode.
Hate.
Hey, if you can't take your critics, Charlie boy. Anyway, then of course we get, the Trenzalore itself, the dying TARDIS, and the whole dimensioning losing it, which is really just an excuse to have a ginormous TARDIS looming over things. Really doesn't make sense. How we've been explained how the TARDIS works.
Yeah, I feel like the TARDIS dying without an explosion.
Yeah, that's.
The way the TARDIS works seems to change from episode to episode anyway.
Yes, it really does.
Especially with Moffat at control.
Or from showrunner to showrunner.
I kind of feel like each Moffat episode is set in a different universe from the episodes that came before it, because the way the TARDIS works from, the Pandorica opens compared to the Doctor's Wife, compared to Journey to the Center, compared to Name of the Doctor, it's different each time. And and that's just the most obvious example.
It's kind of a brilliant example of writing a show without having a series Bible.
Yeah.
I think have I brought this up on previous podcasts?
Not in such words, but
okay.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Shows like Buffy, shows like Star Trek: The Next Generation, shows like other shows in the Trek series prior to Voyager, and other modern shows that have this massive continuity porn. tend to have a writer's Bible that's passed out to anybody writing episodes.
Oh, you meant literally. I thought you meant like, conceptually.
Oh no, no, no. They wrote one series Bible per season for Next Generation.
Romeo.
I've actually seen these things sold at auctions at Star Trek conventions. They go for quite a bit. I tried to bid on one once. I didn't make it.
That's hilarious. Romeo Moon, Gem and the Holograms came with a Bible, and that Bible came on the DVD box sets.
They do that sometimes as well. But yeah, even in some of the 80s cartoons, they did the same thing. Is that what they do is, for these writers, they establish the main characters, who they are, their motives and personalities. But with science fiction series, it's even more because they have to do it for each piece of technology.
Yeah, and actually, even as a matter of fact, before they actually decided to just make a movie, that was what they were doing with Steven Spielberg for the Doctor Who attempt in the 90s, which ended up being just the one movie, but still, they actually did have a freaking Bible that they made for it.
Fortunately, it was written by an idiot, but we're not talking about that.
There are some flaws in it, but...
Written by an idiot, I feel like we're bringing it back to...
Yeah, talk about bringing it back around. Moffat!
Well, no, because
I don't mean to straight out attack the man, but when you look at the writing of episodes like this, you can't help but feel that way.
Well, for me, a lot of this, for the variations you're mentioning on how the TARDIS works from episode to episode, each one of those episodes you mentioned had a separate writer. So it's like each one of those writers is writing blind. You don't have a string of series Bibles to list how things work, how the TARDIS works, how the Doctor's regeneration works, how anything like that.
How pocket universes work.
Yes.
And somehow in the 70s and 80s, that kind of worked, having every regeneration be different and certain things, be original. They somehow managed to make it work, especially within the guidelines of those decades, but...
Well,
somehow
another thing was back in the 70s and 80s, special effects were different every time they were replacing the Doctor. Right. And, generally, the regeneration was just either a faint glow or just the, just kind of the one image fading into another.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't go overboard on the FX back then. The Fourth Doctor to the Fifth Doctor is the first time they did kind of a massive special effects extravaganza with the regeneration, and that was with the whole Watcher thing, kind of cocooning the Doctor and turning him into Peter Davidson.
Yep. Which
and then they
awesome
kind of had then they had kind of the explosive fifth to sixth one done in Caves of Androzani, which was also very nice. And then of course they couldn't actually get Colin Baker for the sixth to seventh regeneration, so they just had
a blur on Sylvester.
This blurry overlay on his face. Yeah.
Poor Sylvester McCoy in a fright wig.
How did they get Sylvester
McCoy?
How did they get Sylvester McCoy to fit Colin Baker's uniform, or did they make a new
A lot of padding.
Yeah, they made it fit with a lot of padding, and then they pulled out the padding.
But,
I remember Davison talking about how the pants that he wore in the show aren't usable anymore because they made everything bigger for Colin to wear.
Yep. Yeah, that was like the confidential for Time Crash. But yeah, so a lot of the fact that we get this writing fail comes from the fact that these writers don't seem to have a coherent set of rules to follow on how the stuff works. And I can see why that would change from like showrunner to showrunner.
Even though we've had, 6 regenerations that look exactly identical, I think.
Yeah. Nearly identical. There's been some variations. But regardless of that, but, the stuff that you mentioned were in the last 2-3 seasons. So there hasn't even been a showrunner change between those.
Right.
So they're obviously, the writers are operating without any set rules in front of them.
And if
And
anyone was to ever question them, they'd just go argle flargle blargle and run away.
yeah, that's basically to be honest to me, that's an example of bad show running. If you don't give your writers the tool set to make sure that everything is on the same level.
Well, I kind of get the idea. Here's how he script edits. Hey, hey, Steven, I need some help. I'm writing Sherlock, guys. I'll be back next week. Well, wait, I have a question. I'm writing Sherlock right now. Don't bother me. That's how he show runs. Is kind of the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, that about hammers it, doesn't it?
And you notice he added the Sherlockian character to his show after he became the head writer for Sherlock.
Yep. Just so you'd have something that he could easily write out.
Or, he could convert sideways.
Even though this Sherlock is largely considered by fans to be a human version of the Doctor.
I might actually have to watch that now, but still.
Actually, I've heard a lot of people actually like that Sherlock.
I just haven't gotten a chance. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, but I've been hearing a lot of people who actually really like it, but I'd sit here and still go, I don't care. I'd rather watch Doctor Who. You're ruining my Doctor Who, damn it.
Like the fact that we're losing half a season of Doctor Who a year so that we can get 3 movie-length episodes of Sherlock out does not seem to be an equitable trade to me as someone who'd rather watch Doctor Who than Sherlock.
Agreed there. If he really is having that much trouble trying to handle both shows, then he needs to step down from one or the other.
Exactly.
If what he really wants to do is Sherlock, then he needs to pass the torch on Doctor Who.
Very seriously needs it.
Because Doctor Who is the BBC's flagship series. It is the one that has been getting the most attention since like 2006. Even more so than Coronation Street, and that says something.
Oh, wow. Apparently Sherlock is actually now starting to suffer, actually. Apparently it's suffering from a lot of time jumps, and they killed Moriarty.
Oh, they'll reveal he was actually living in a ring.
Actually, I was just starting to think that myself. Actually,
I have a hard time, because right now in my mentality, Sherlock Holmes is Robert Downey Jr.
I never watched that movie.
Movies, there's been 2. They're making 2 more.
I don't think I'll ever be able to watch something with Robert Downey Jr. and him without picturing him saying, "We have a Hulk."
I can do that with these movies. He's different enough from Tony Stark that my brain buys it.
Which is funny because the person I know who's seen those movies pretty much is under the impression that he just plays Robert Downey Jr. in everything he's in.
I don't know. I really like those movies. So I would recommend watching them, Bill.
Apparently Sherlock started off really good, but now it's slowly going downhill too. So both shows are going downhill. An obvious sign that the writer has too much to do and needs to cut back. Which is actually a sign of some quality of other shows from what I've been hearing lately these days too.
Well, it's very hard to do 2 shows at the same time.
Or 3, or 4.
Joss Whedon.
Unless you're Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon. When he split off Buffy and Angel, he started focusing on Angel, and he let up on the creative duties for Buffy.
I can see that because in the middle, Buffy was kind of weaker than it was in the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it, Buffy's last year, Firefly's first year, and Angel's second to last year, as far as I can tell, were all the same year. And that was a damn good year for all 3 shows.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how he pulled it off, but yes, when he originally was working on Angel, he had to focus more on Angel. So he only came back for the crossover episodes for Buffy and handed most of the executive producer work off to somebody else. And I think he became like an associate producer or something. I'd actually have to watch the credits.
I don't know how Russell did it, where he was writing as many episodes of Doctor Who per season as Moffat does. He was I don't know how much involvement he had in Torchwood, but at least a fair amount.
He was very well involved in Torchwood,
and he was
at
running
least a
Sarah
mild
Jane as well.
in Sarah Jane Adventures. First of all, those shows were set on a staggered schedule.
Yeah.
We never had more than one of those shows running at the same time, or maybe two on like 1 week of overlap. So
at most,
production would gear down for one at the same time the other one was starting up.
So actually, Russell had perfect timing for those.
Yes, but it was one of the reasons he did step down was the fact that he was burning out badly.
He can come back any day now, please. Please.
And I think his I don't know if it's, I don't know if his partner or husband or what was also
we love
having.
you. Come back, kick Steven out and take over again, make our Who happy again.
I don't know if I'd want the same person to come back because that's kind of a thing about Doctor Who is keep moving forward with new production teams.
I wouldn't want. Well, actually, I kind of would want Tennant to come back, but that's just I like Tennant so much better than I do Smith.
Well, dude, give Russell T Davies some time with Smith. I guarantee you, your opinion of him will probably turn right around. You'll actually write him an ability to act.
I mean,
again.
I'm not Smith. Based on what we've seen, Smith can act what he's given. Mm-hmm. He's just been given crap. I have nothing but respect for the way he, as an actor, has handled the Doctor.
Yes, he is essentially our modern-day version of Colin Baker. That's what I'm seeing here.
I can see that.
That's true. Colin Baker's given a lot of hate from the fan base, and it's totally unjust. It's totally unjustified because a lot of his characterization came down from on high, and he was basically acting the way John Nathan Turner wanted him to, and acting in this very specific, unstable, crazed manner that was not what he wanted to do with the character.
I've seen one long serial with the Sixth Doctor in it. Mm-hmm. That was written by Nicholas Briggs. And I've got to say, he went from being a doctor I had little interest in, other than just the fact that he was a doctor, to being the doctor that I kind of really want to see more of just because of the way he was in Sirens of Time. The way Colin portrayed him and everything.
You can miss the Trial of the Time Lord, but watch the rest of it, the good and the bad, and then go to try to grab some of his stuff off of Big Finish.
Even his first episode?
Even the first episode, though, you might have to take a pint of Malox with it because it's really bad, but it's still good to get, just to, get through the good and the bad with that character.
Although, from what I understand, Colin was good in Trial of the Time Lord in terms of, like, his arguments with the Time Lords and stuff.
Yes,
he was coming out strong at that point.
He acted well. It was just the fact that one is just...
he had to act well against a lot of bad ideas is the problem.
A lot of simultaneous bad ideas because, that was also them trying to adjust the show after the 18-month hiatus to make the higher-up boards happy.
Oh, yeah. Romeo Moon is mentioning some more stuff again. She really didn't care for Tennant, but Donna fixed it for her.
I really like Donna.
Yeah, I will say that I don't care much for the previous works of the woman who played Donna, but definitely Donna was awesome in Doctor Who.
The only thing I know of her from before she played Donna was a Doctor Who sketch on her own show.
Yeah, I've seen some of her other work. She tends to play these very obnoxious characters.
Yeah.
And I'm not fond of her humor style. And a lot of people aren't. So when they heard she was coming onto the show,
they were already screaming no.
They were screaming bloody murder. And when we saw The Runaway Bride, it was pretty much, oh no.
The first few episodes with Donna, I could not get past how annoying she was.
Actually,
it wasn't until the second time I watched them that I realized what good episodes they were.
I was actually good with Donna from the beginning of the fourth series.
Well, yeah, because you had been with some of the companions in the 80s that people can't stand.
Well, it's not just that, but no, compared to her performance in The Runaway Bride.
Oh, yeah, she's like, I'm looking for you!
because when we heard she was coming back after the character in The Runaway Bride, we're just like, oh no.
Right. Yeah. But by then she
But, but
she had
she
realized
was
that she
eager
was.
and enthusiastic to do this, and it was like, wow. It was really a case of, wow, you really gave me a new outlook on my life, Doctor.
Right.
It's kind of awesome in that case.
Yes.
And
So
of course,
I was really
course,
with the character, even with the fatty aliens.
if Moffat had written that episode, the Doctor would have gone back to her childhood and made her a less obnoxious child.
Which really should be under the lines of things you do not do, but that's going back to the Christmas Carol one.
Yeah. So, name of the Doctor. Any other? What's the next major thing we want to bring up?
Okay. Do we have
I'm
another
kind of thinking we're saving. I'm kind of thinking we're saving the pros for the end of the episode.
There are any other flaws with the episode other than the fact that the concept is inherently flawed from the writing stage?
I would say, other than the fact that certain things make my brain break just trying to think about them, never mind discussing them.
Give me one, Bill.
Give us some fodder, Bill.
The time stream portal that leads to a room that also leads to the Doctor's entire life.
Yes, first of all, I will say that one is just pure bunk from the beginning.
And it turns red when the... What?
It turns red when a bad guy walks into it. Ooh! Jesus.
That's pure writing crap. It is.
We're making the glowy thing red because something bad is happening.
And, he didn't really say it was a Time Lord. He's basically saying that any time traveler, that basically happens when they die, is that there's this lingering scar
That's
in
bogus.
time of what happened with their life.
Yeah, because that's
Dear
what...
God, wouldn't those things have been a dime a dozen on Gallifrey?
Not to mention on Earth.
Because that's what happened when River died, wasn't it?
Not
Right?
that I'm aware of.
When
No.
River died, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
Yeah, sure. The library machine became a giant portal through time and space. Not.
And when Jack's time agent buddy died, that's what happened. I think he died.
Yeah, really what happened.
Yeah, it's, like I said, that's pure bunk.
Just
Give me another one, Bill.
Well, that's the entire second half of the episode. But,
Clara becomes...
I'm still trying to figure out what the Doctor
Very
stepped
soon the
into and
universe.
what he came out at the other end.
Well, okay. First of all, Clara pretty much pulls a River in this. And pretty much goes from supporting character to Mary Sue with one step.
One huge
Okay, we
frickin'
were
step.
talking about this a little bit before we started streaming, and Matt and I were kind of thinking that this was less Mary Sue and more parting of the ways, Deus Ex Machina Rose type of thing.
Yes, but except
So
now...
a one-time thing,
except-
because she's
Except
not
now...
going to have the power to do that again later.
Yes, except now that the character is still alive, she has now been on every single adventure the Doctor has ever been on.
And she's been dressed as all of his companions, I believe.
Yes, looked like it, which is really strange. So,
Yeah.
does this mean a piece of Clara was in every single companion that's ever traveled with the Doctor?
Even bigger bullshit.
That is kind of why I feel that people will have that. People like, maybe not newer fans, but people like who like maybe more like you who've been watching for years and years and grew up with the show, all of a sudden seeing the role that Clara has at the end of this episode and not wanting to watch another episode of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. It's basically, Moffat... I really don't feel like Moffat has any respect for anything that came before him. He seems to reach out and tries to actively defile it.
That almost... I almost put that on my checklist. I mean, between Bells of St. John talking about how the 11th was the best, and then this where he's basically going back and changing things to make himself an integral part of the show's history. It kind of just screams ego.
Yeah, something else to stroke his ego to make even bigger and bigger changes to the universe, which
It's
makes
like
the fans scream louder and louder. No, stop
his
it!
ego has to be bigger than if William Shatner was part of Doctor Who and Tom Baker teamed up with William Shatner, Moffat would have to somehow have the bigger ego than the two of them combined during their respective time periods.
God.
So, about the same line as George Lucas.
Maybe. Maybe. Except he'd have to grow... You actually have to do that Moffat growing an evil beard and...
And then he'd have to make Jar Jar Binks. Oh, wait.
Okay, so yes.
That was
So
trash.
Claire has now done this and has traveled with all the Doctor's adventures and has been there for each one. She's now come out the other end. She's now going to have all of this memory.
Or is she?
We now essentially...
Actually, no. We know at the end of the episode that she does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she can tell
So
all the
now
doctors.
have River Mark II.
Yes, she could tell who all the doctors were as they were running around her.
And
Yes.
that's the problem, because Rose did not remember anything from her time as Goddess of Time,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of made her a normal person. This is going to take that away from Clara. Her whole, I'm a normal girl thing, that's not going to be the case.
Yes, this is why she's going to start ticking on the Mary Sue meter.
She's already starting to reach
one I played in front of
6,000.
River Song and it goes off like a freaking Geiger counter.
As I said, she's already reaching 6,000. It's not going to take long before she hits over 9,000.
Well, she hasn't physically broken time yet.
Give her 5 episodes.
Moffat doesn't need a companion to break time. He just
No, he had...
fighting.
River did it at the end of Season 6, or Series 6.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, after all this time, we still don't know why the TARDIS decided to go evil at the end of Season 5. Wasn't that supposed to be explained eventually?
Yeah, but Moffat doesn't care.
Moffat doesn't care because Moffat is Moffat. Moffat doesn't
I
explain
feel-
anything. Moffat is Moffat.
Moffat is like the honey badger of scriptwriters.
You try asking, demanding things of it.
Honey badger don't give a frick, and neither does Moffat. So, yeah. So, we're going to wind up with Clara basically being Supergirl. And we've known that she's already been signed on for Series 8, as has Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat. We're kind of praying for a regeneration in there. We're kind of praying for a replacement. We don't know yet.
If Moffat regenerates and Smith doesn't, I'd be content.
Yes. I want Moffat fired within 2 episodes of the next season.
And you know what? Considering what he's done with the show, we need a woman head writer. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah.
What,
When was the last
Davies
one we
doesn't count?
No. He was close enough, but when was the last time we actually had a female head?
Verity Lambert?
Mary Lou Lambert
I
in
thought
the beginning.
Back in the 60s. So yeah, I think it's about time for another one.
Unless there was one during the Troughton era, but I know there wasn't one during the Pertwee, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't one after that.
Honestly, I know none of John Nathan Turner's script editors were female that I can think of.
And Nathan Turner pretty much worked as the showrunner then anyway. He had supreme executive power.
Yeah.
And made it all flop.
But yeah, we really need to change up. I don't really care if it's a man or a woman,
Don't
just
care if
as
you're
long
black
as
or
they're
white.
good and talented and not going to try to overload themselves.
Don't care if you're a man, woman, black or white. As long as you don't write
I
like
don't
Moffat.
even care if they're a good writer.
You can be
As
a
long as
mediocre writer and still be
they're
better than
not a
Moffat.
writer.
Is
and
George Takei working on something right now?
Oh, we could use him, yes, please.
That would be fucking awesome.
Doctor's new catchphrase. Oh my.
I don't know.
That might be a little
That would
overboard.
be singularly frightening for me. That might be even more horribly horrific.
Dude. I have officially made Nightmare Fuel for you again, Randy. You're welcome. Bow. Bow.
No, I meant George Takei doing that because I don't know. There's something innately British about Doctor Who. I am a little bit of a regionalist when it comes to the show. I kind of feel like it should remain in British hands.
Neil Gaiman counts.
Neil Gaiman was born in England. He just chooses to live in Wisconsin.
He's a little crazy for that, if you ask me, because of the winters. But okay. But then again, we're talking about the man who wrote Sandman. So what am I talking about? Crazy yet awesome.
Mm-hmm. He grew up on the show. He understands what it is.
Mm-hmm. He could write better than Moffat any day.
Yes, he can write rings around Moffat.
Of course, of course we could.
But from what I've heard, he's
I would
actually
honestly say
interested in being showrunner.
if we compare Moffat's episodes when he was just a writer to Gaiman's episodes as a Doctor Who writer, I would kind of put Empty Child kind of on top of the stack there.
I don't know. Also, every episode that Gaiman's done has been with Moffat as showrunner, so...
That said, Gaiman has done enough things in his life. I think he knows when he's multitasking too much and when he's not.
Yeah,
because he's clearly done a lot of projects in his life, and he's pretty much done well in all the ones I'm familiar with, anyway.
I believe he just recently is releasing, or has already released, a book. He is currently trying to get a character he wrote for Spawn to be part of the Marvel Universe.
Really?
Yup. Angelina.
I remember hearing something about that, but I forget the details.
But
it was a character that Neil Gaiman actually wrote for Spawn, and he is saying, he fought long and hard and finally got the rights to her, and he's going, hey, Marvel, come get it, come get it. I'll write a little bit for you, too.
The main thing is, I know the fact that originally they got him to do The Doctor's Wife, but they didn't expect him to be able to write another episode. To actually get him to write another episode because he told them officially he was too busy, they literally dangled the Cybermen in front of him like a carrot.
And even though it was not exactly the world's greatest Cyberman episode, it was still a very competent episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be still hard pressed to find one that I like better than in the new show.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you count Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, which I wouldn't necessarily say it was good. It was just freaking awesome in terms of fan wankery.
Pretty much. Even Russell T. Davies admits that.
Let's see. Now, what else was there that wasn't well liked about this episode? I mentioned the fact I didn't like the fact that they involved the Doctor's death.
How about the extra Doctor at the end? We've kind of touched on that.
So, who wants to explain the rumors that this kind of...
I will explain it as far as I understand it.
Go ahead.
The following is hearsay. It is what we think we understand what was going on based on conversations heard in a forum on what is going to happen in
forums and news sites based off of unnamed sources. So like fan news, not like actual newspaper news.
Those of you that do not want anything that might actually be a spoiler for the anniversary special, this would be a good time to go get a cheese sandwich.
Go on, skip 2.
Yeah. Basically, what they're informing us is that John Hurt is playing the Ninth Doctor. Not Eccleston's Ninth Doctor. Apparently, between Paul McGann and Eccleston, there was another incarnation who lost the right to be called the Doctor because he did something during the Time War that is so horribly horrific and so against the nature of the Doctor, even though he had no choice, that in order to continue calling himself the Doctor, he basically forced himself to regenerate and forgot everything he did, forgot all about that incarnation. Now, if something, and now the fact that this is out in the open, the Doctor's going to start remembering it. If this sounds familiar to any Star Trek fans out there, it's very similar to Star Trek DS9's Joran Dax plotline. Now, what this means is the fact that basically the 50th anniversary is about to reveal that the Doctor basically apparently had to spend some time as some form of complete monster.
Or at least as a soldier, which is kind of what we knew he had become during the Time War.
But more so, I mean, are we talking, like Mengele bad or what?
I'm kind of just getting more to the point of, he was focused more on killing his enemies than on being the Doctor, and then he turned around and blew up Gallifrey. I'm not really seeing it as anything more than that in terms of...
I think, though, he could have gotten through that and still called himself the Doctor. There has to be something more.
Well, I honestly, and I'm going to sound like a terrible person, but I think you're really giving Moffat more credit than he deserves. I really think if Russell T Davies had written this, I would say, okay, there's some sort of hidden thing we're going to discover. Here, I think this was the gimmick, that was the explanation, and there's nothing more coming.
So if this is going to be a gigantic, colossal letdown,
I think all of the terrible things are things that we already know about. That's what I think. I don't think there's more to what.
And if so, this is going to be the most disappointing special. In a way, I'll be relieved, but in another way, with all this lead-in, it is going to be absolutely disappointing. Because the Doctor knew he did all this. Why would he have forced himself to forget about this one incarnation and yet remember...
the whole forgetting thing wasn't so much what we've seen so far. That's based on this fan speculation we've seen. Whereas the 11th Doctor seemed to clearly know exactly what he was looking at and who he was talking to. The whole forgetting thing, I think, was something that fans concocted as a way to try and ease themselves into the water, so to speak.
Yeah, I guarantee you this is not gonna be how it happens, but what I'm hearing from Romeo Moon again is sounding really awesome. Like having a bit of the Master somehow controlling the Doctor inside of his head.
I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
I'm
pretty sure it's not going to happen, but would it not be epically awesome?
The thing is, based on what we know of the Doctor during the Time War, we know that nothing of that nature is possible. That's the only problem with that idea. I mean, assuming, of course, we're still talking about the Time War, and that Moffat's not bringing up some other thing.
Now, the question that I'm asking is, does this mean that the entire 50th anniversary special is going to be happening inside the Doctor's head?
Please,
It'll explain why Rose is there.
Yeah, because I'm also trying to figure out why the heck... Well, that would be also, considering the fact that he said everything in his head was him, because if they decide, they meet this John Hurt character in the real world, so to speak, wouldn't that mean that, considering he only existed in the Time War, that they just broke it?
I mean, there's
nothing in the Time War is supposed to be able to come out of the Time War.
So, do you think John Hurt is going to start doing Big Finish specials after this?
He's already done Big Finish specials, I think.
As the Doctor?
Oh wait, no, that was David Warner.
David Warner's awesome. I would have preferred him as the other Doctor.
Yeah,
he'd be more intense.
That would actually be very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But they just used him earlier this.
Yeah.
They used him in Cold War, so they can't use him again.
David Warner's
Although
an awesome
I'm
villain.
kind of getting this idea if we had John Hurt as the Doctor versus Christopher Lee as the Master, I might forgive it if we got that scene, but probably not. It's probably not going to happen.
No.
Yeah, you'd have to fly Christopher Lee out there, or at least
Although,
transport him out.
You have
it
to
does
fly
make me
Christopher
wonder
Lee out
if
to Britain.
the Doctor Who movies with Peter Cushing had continued on into the 70s, would they have eventually cast Christopher Lee as the Master?
They would have. They definitely would have. They most certainly
they would
have.
have to. It's freaking the combo there needed.
I mean, either that or he would
Would
have been
those become the
Davros.
greatest movies of all time?
Yes.
He would have either been the Master or Davros. But
Either
the Master
one.
appears more. The Master's appeared more than Davros, so I'd rather the Master.
Actually, both. No, both. I want both.
Yeah, oh, they would
I
rewrite
substitute your reality and make my
Actually,
own.
that-
I want Christopher Lee as both.
That makes sense when you consider that there were Dalek movies and not Doctor Who movies. Imagine if they were like, okay, he's the Master, but he's also the guy who created the Daleks.
That
They would have
actually would
if
make
you-
some form of messed up logical sense.
if you look at the writing in those movies, that's kind of how they would have simplified it too.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Oh my God, Billy, you fried my brain.
Matt now has a goal in life to find the alternate reality where these movies were filmed and watch them.
Fan fiction. Fan fiction. Fan fiction writers. We need this. I need this. I need to write this. I need to write this down.
I don't know.
How do you
It
know
might
that?
be my idea, but I'm not writing it. I've got my own works,
How do you
thank
know
you
that?
very much.
Oh, speaking of which, Randy, I don't know if you saw when I tagged you this on Facebook, but have you heard the news about Amazon and fan fiction?
No, I haven't.
They've been they basically set up a subset, like a section of them.
Mhm.
They're basically procuring the rights from various fandoms to legally publish fan fiction and get royalties for the creators, like for the writers of the fan fiction, and of course there would be royalties for the property owners as well.
Wow.
And I didn't look too deeply into it because it's still kind of coming into fruition, and it's only a few fandoms, none of which I'm a part of yet, but they're planning to grow that as much as they can.
Wow. Yeah. That's...
And I don't know if people like, Paramount or the BBC or Lucasfilm would have any part of it, but if they did, that would be freaking awesome.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Of course, Disney's not going to go anywhere near it with a 100-foot pole.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's mind-shattering for me.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about that.
No,
Discuss.
I figured I'd mention it.
Yeah. Actually, we're getting close, so we should probably start mentioning what we actually like about this episode, if anything.
So what we liked.
Well, Murray Gold was up to his usual impeccable standards.
Yes.
The music was... Flynn finds the music to be overblown for this, or that I actually like the soundtracks. I will admit, I have all the soundtracks on my computer, and I listen to them a lot when I write.
I have a couple of them.
Murray Gold is very good at doing mood music. So, yeah, as a writer, a lot of my music on my laptop is sorted by moods instead of by what they're from.
That makes sense. Yeah, I do the same, except I usually listen to music on Pandora if I'm home.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't think I could find the Depression channel on Pandora or the Frightened channel.
No, but I do have a soundtrack channel that plays epic soundtrack music.
Yeah, it's not just the feeling of epic. It's, I'm writing a scene that's a downer scene. I want sad, downing music to help enhance my mood,
okay,
so that I can actually empathize with the characters more as I'm writing them. If I'm writing a happy, funny scene, I want lighthearted music.
I got you.
So I therefore have my tracks sorted by mood. And yes, there is also the action, the listing of action tracks, which includes things like "I Am the Doctor," and there's quite a few of them. I think from like the season 3 soundtrack that were just wonderfully epic to go in there, and season 4. But
I'm
yeah,
going to have to look up some
Murray
Doctor
Gold was up
soundtrack
to
music.
par. The bit with the Doctor and River was very well written for what it was.
Ignore the fact that a computer program is doing what she's doing, yeah. If you can suspend your disbelief on what River is...
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the dialogue itself.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If you can suspend your disbelief on what she is and being there, if you can get past that, it was good.
Also, I love the fact that the Doctor actually, did the tender, touching kiss moment, and then had the aside of, yeah, considering I'm the only one that can see you in the room, I have no idea what they're thinking of me.
I kind of wish they had just done a scene of just like Strax and Jenny and Vastra staring at him while he made out with the air.
They kind of did.
They
Because they cut to them right after he said that. And they all had this look of, what the...
Yeah, but like you didn't actually see it like from their perspective or anything like that.
Yeah, it would have been nice to cut to their perspective and see the Doctor holding his hand up, touching cheek of midair.
And trying to suckle a kiss at it. I had to look just awkward, making lips into the air.
That would have actually been that would have been just the icing on the cake there. I loved the first scene of Gallifrey, but like I said, I'm a sucker for a Gallifrey scene. Anything and any excuse for Murray Gold to pull out the "This Is Gallifrey" theme, dust it off, and make a new mix of it.
Equals yay.
And one of these days, somebody is going to compose a YouTube video that's just all of those themes done in a montage, and I will just be all over that one. That'll be bookmarked on mine.
Give me the soundtracks, I can do it.
Season 3, Season 4, the specials, there's 2 on there, and we'll see if he pulls it out again for this one. I'm hoping. Cross your fingers.
David Tennant has now the face of everyone who just saw this episode as well. What they thought of the ending.
Actually, most people that I know at least most people that I'm friends with on Facebook, our reaction after watching the episode was, what?
Actually, funny enough, a friend of my sister's, I actually have friended on Facebook, didn't know she was actually into Doctor Who until this weekend. All of a sudden, outcry in all caps with exclamation marks. Moffat!
So Moffat's the new Wheaton?
I'm like,
new Khan.
oh, so you saw the ending of this season too, didn't you? She's like, yes.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's facing bitter disappointment by this.
Oh no, not by a long shot.
Wait a second, weren't we talking about what we like?
But yeah, back to what we like is a little...
What I liked was seeing, what was it, remastered footage from the 80s, essentially?
Oh, the previous Doctor CGI overlays, yes.
There were some parts that I felt could have had more. For example, the so-called Troughton scene, I paused on that thing 5 times just to see if we actually saw his face, and I still could not convince myself that it was really him. It looked like someone bigger than him anyway. But
he looked like that in that coat.
Yeah. The doctors that we clearly saw were great to see. Mm-hmm. Especially, I think a couple of them we saw multiple angles of, but even just seeing them back, just seeing them in the show in something other than a flashback scene,
or just a cut image of their face.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And anything that's not, even anything that's not just an image of their face, or
for me, it also kind of
face.
It became kind of a name the episode. Which episode is this from?
Where did you last see this one?
Yeah, I don't know enough of the classic Doctors to know exactly what was from an old episode or not.
Yeah, Flynn and I were playing that game on Skype earlier.
I have no clue where the first
So,
Doctor footage comes from.
Oh,
so
God. That was the one I was iffy on.
that's me and Matt we're talking about that. We're like, all right, let's find the credits to see if that's really Hartnell or if that's somebody else.
Oh, that's
And the
Hartnell.
credits
Oh, it's
did
definitely
not
Hartnell.
have anybody.
But yeah, they didn't
I mean,
list. I was
I know-
looking for that list to see if they listed
I'm
one
pretty sure
episode.
the back of his head wasn't Hartnell.
Yeah.
Like I know his voice was definitely cut and pasted from other things he had done.
But yes,
But we were trying to figure out where the scene could possibly
but
have
that
been.
close-up of him looking around, I was trying to figure out where that one was from.
Yeah.
So it might have just been they took Hartnell and pasted him onto Gallifrey.
Yes.
Yes, pretty much.
Likewise, there's a scene with Troughton running across this beach, only I'm pretty sure that was Troughton from the Five Doctors, and he wasn't anywhere on a beach like that, so they must have taken him running.
Was the shoulder that brushed past Clara in that scene supposed to be McGann, based on what I've seen of people talking about Paul McGann being in the same scene as Troughton?
It was either McGann or Baker, I couldn't tell. Tom Baker.
Right. I think we'd recognize Colin's shoulder. It would blind us, for starters.
If it was put in direct light, yes.
Really, you just have to look near the shoes and see if you see day-glow orange spats.
Or the blinding rainbow of colors. Either way. But yeah, actually, wow. We've actually... Is anything else we can think of that was really good? Because I think that's about the limit.
Did you have anything you liked, Matt?
Liked? Like is such a strong word.
This is a man that likes bad movies.
Oh, yeah,
Bad
and
movies
again,
and
I would
bad
remind you
movies.
that I don't come to Doctor Who to watch a bad movie or
Yeah,
episode.
I know. No, I'm just talking, if you break down the different elements of this episode, is there anything in there you liked or thought was well done?
um, mm,
Special effects were good.
some of the effects were nice, yes. They weren't as bad as some of the other effects this
I mean,
season.
they didn't all make sense, but that's not the effects department's fault.
Yeah.
You know, the acting, the sets, anything.
Um, the graveyard set was nice. It was okay,
Okay.
when we weren't looking up at the stupid TARDIS. It was a nice graveyard
Yeah,
set.
the big TARDIS was the distraction, but yeah, that looked very much like you would see a war cemetery.
More cemetery mixed in with a little bit of Universal Monsters Cemetery.
Well,
Just a bit.
have you ever seen those old European cemeteries, Matt?
The European ones, no. I can't say I have.
They go on for miles. I'm not kidding.
But yeah,
I've
the
never
fancy
seen them
headstones.
personally, but I've seen pictures. Yeah,
But yeah, the fancy headstones is what I'm kind of remarking as is slightly Universal
that's
Monsters.
true. A lot of the war ones were usually just crosses.
Mm-hmm. This was a rather fancy war.
Yeah, but at the same time, I could
cemetery.
kind of see if this really is the grave of the Doctor, or even if he had any role in it, he would be pissed off if every single person who died didn't actually have a name listed.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Even if his grave was a fake and it wasn't actually him.
Yeah. I guess
No,
that's my 2 cents of something
unnamed
decent.
soldier number 23.
We found a bit of him over here, over there, and up there.
Okay, so we've each given something we do kind of like about this. Do we have anything else to say about this episode?
We could give it rankings and pretty much close it. I think that's about all we got left.
Why? Oh, why? Dear God, Moffat, oh, why?
There's not enough OYs in the day to say how many OYs
Now,
about this
I would just
episode.
rather take all of the RTD written scenes of someone saying what, and loop them.
and then just look at the giant TARDIS and then go back to it. Then come back, see the swirly bullshit, and go back to it again.
I'm sorry, my mental image of as a police officer holding up a doll to my inner child and asking me where Stephen Moffat's writing touched it. That's how violated my inner child was by this episode. We've not been on speaking terms since.
He's kind of sitting in the back corner going, leave me alone.
Yes. I've mentioned this before. Doctor Who is a very it touches a very special chord in me. It was a staple of what I watched as a kid every Saturday morning on WHA, which is our local public television station. I would be sitting there watching, I'd turn off Saturday morning cartoons. And these were 80s Saturday morning cartoons. This was the good stuff. I would turn them off so I could watch Doctor Who. Because it was, in a way, for my childhood, which I was living in the 80s with the fear of nuclear annihilation over our heads. It was hope. Much like a lot of people talk about Star Trek. For me, it was just a little bit of an 8-year-old kid establishing a belief that there was someone out there that could save anyone from everything.
Kind of ironic considering what Doctor Who was like during parts of the early 80s.
I wasn't watching them as they were being aired, Bill.
Oh, okay. I wasn't exactly sure if any of that was live or what.
No, we did not get simul airings back then.
Oh no!
Okay.
By the time
I didn't know Doctor Who had been canceled until 1991.
So you weren't watching the Fifth Doctor stroll into scenes of massacres as a child.
No, I was watching Tom Baker.
Yeah, he was mostly seeing Tom Baker and maybe a little bit of the third and.
I would eventually get to the Fifth Doctor, but it was largely Tom Baker. It was some of the Third Doctor era, and I remember a bit of the first Doctor as well. But it was
Of course, the Second Doctor, they pretty much didn't have anything at that time.
Because they stupidly got rid of it all, practically.
But yeah, especially with Tom Baker, you got the feeling that he was essentially Superman. He could save everyone from anything.
And he enjoyed playing Santa.
He'd always pop in and save the day.
He always enjoyed playing Santa, or AKA the Doctor, in public.
And so for me, that was it was a kind of a reassurance to my inner child. And as a kid, you never want those kind of stories to have an end. So when my inner child saw the fact that the Doctor was talking about his own death, and you see the dying TARDIS as his own grave, it was just he needed a hug.
History can be rewritten.
Only if we have Superboy Prime to punch Moffat in the face.
And my inner child really wants to see them write this one out of there. And I'm hoping that we're going to find something when Moffat finally does write the end of the 11th Doctor that null and voids this somehow. Regardless of if it's over the rest of the episode is pure crap, I will be happy for that and that alone.
Things are better in my world, punch reality.
That the Trenzalore isn't what we think it is. I will be happy for that.
Things were better in my world, punch reality, unhiccup this horrible mess of an episode.
That's the thing. The whole thing with the Doctor having this massive grave, this is in a continuity where it's established that people from all corners of time are certain that River Song killed the Doctor in America in, I'm not even sure what year it was supposed to be. And so why would he have a massive grave on another planet? Wouldn't it strike them as off a little bit?
I
think this is kind of after the fact, though.
Yeah, this is already after he had already done this.
After he had wiped himself,
faked his death, wiped himself out, and gotten reestablished. Because there was a line that was in the Neil Gaiman episode that does point out the fact that somebody could reestablish it just by piecing together what's missing.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
But still, a massive monument to him still kind of goes against any of that making sense.
Really did have.
Moffat!
I mean, besides all the other reasons why that didn't make sense.
Moffat, 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 hey! Moffat, Moffat.
But there's still enough people that know and care. So I can still see that. I could still see that at the end.
I just realized
I really don't.
if we get even an hour and a half special, we're having Daleks, Cybermen, Zygons, Unit, Tenant, Rose, Clara, and 11. How the hell is there going to be room for John Hurt?
We don't know.
There's always room for John Hurt.
I mean, in the role he's supposed to be as some sort of major role in the episode. How is there room for
There's
that?
always room for John. Well, think about the 5 Doctors, Bill. You had Daleks,
That's not a good
Cybermen,
example.
the Master. What else was in that
But
episode? The actual bad guys, Gallifrey.
The Dalek fleet and the Cybermen fleet are essentially going to be the same as the Pandorica Opens Daleks and Cybermen fleets.
Arg.
I don't know. I will not rate that one until I see it.
Yeah, we have to really see it. We don't know any details about this other than what they are slowly releasing as being part of the episode.
Mm-hmm. We have to wait till November.
We have no idea what the plot's gonna be. We have no idea what it's gonna look like. So, ratings then?
I think we've been going on about this for 2 hours, and trying to avoid going on about this for 2 hours.
2.5. Actually, we're actually
not
about to hit 2.5.
We started about a half hour later, so.
Yeah, we started about a half hour late. I noticed we were at the 20-minute mark when I finished the summary at the beginning, and we are at the 2:10 mark now. So, as far as this actual phone call, so.
Phone call, yeah.
Well, I don't have your little markers there for the episode recording, so.
Well, I won't know what exactly it's gonna be either until it's done.
So, yeah, ratings.
I've been trying to avoid rating this episode for 6 days.
Well, time's up.
Does anybody know their rating?
1.
I thought you said it was boring. How can it be a 1 if it was boring?
Boring, and it was horrible.
The more we talked about it, the more we hate it. Yeah.
It was boring, and boring already gets you about 2, and then you made a horrible ending. 1.
See, boring for me gets it about a 3. Because that's average. Maybe a 2.5.
No, boring. Boring's below average for me.
The boring's below average, but it's not as bad as offensively horrible, which is what a 1 would be.
So,
which is what horrible would be 0. 1 is just, that's pretty bad.
Actually, I thought the rating went from 1 to 5.
Yeah, I was going to say on a scale of 1,
that's true.
People are like a 0. People are like 0. I'm like, if it's a scale of 1 to 10 or a scale of 1 to 5, how is something 0?
I guess I have to be forcibly giving it a 2 because I can't give it a 0. Because apparently 0 doesn't count in our ranking system. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of forced jimmied up into
unless you are talking on stars, because then you do have a 0. And we have actually had history of having it been given a 0 before. Remember the snowmen?
Yeah,
that's true.
Reviewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. We did have 0s before. So I should technically be allowed my 1. Bad episode. Bad. It wasn't completely offensively horrible, but it was pretty bad.
Bill?
I think I'm going to give this a deuce.
Deuce?
Yeah.
I have to agree with you.
Deuce. Ride the deuce.
It's below par. My unpleasant reaction already gives me a negative skew on it. And there are just so many questions and holes and basic where the heck did this come from in the plots that
It's really the mood things like the River and the Doctor scene, and things like that really get it high as a 2.
why it's not floating near the bottom.
Yeah.
So in general, we got a 1.67.
And of course,
Which I still think this one thus far rates higher than Silence in the Library.
Now, if there's somebody who I'm not going to say his name while we're here,
Or not
this
Silence in the
episode
Library,
would probably have
Journey to the Tardis.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think this one still rates higher than Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
Yeah.
That one was pure
that was a unanimous 1 out of 5.
Yes.
Yep.
But if a certain other member of our cast were here, this episode would probably be coming out with about a 2.5. Or
you'd be giving it a 5.
Oh, knowing him. Oh!
I'm thinking like a 3 or a 4.
I will mention this. We did talk to Flynn about this episode on Skype. I think either the night it aired or the night after.
The reaction I saw was, I don't see what was so bad.
Flynn said, and I quote, "This was the wonderful episode. After watching this episode, season 7 becomes I think he said his second favorite season."
Oh, that's right, he did. I remember him saying that about the season.
Oh,
and yeah, I said that was official, that Flynn has no taste. And I'm on record saying that now. As you know, Flynn is my opposite number on this. We rarely see eye to eye on anything, although we do tend to have closer opinions on classic Who than we do on the modern stuff. And basically, when we're on, it becomes epic debate time. Unfortunately, Flynn hasn't had time for the podcast.
If Flynn was here, I was really expecting this to be a double-length episode. If Flynn was here.
If Flynn was here, yeah, we would still be arguing.
We'd be lucky if we were past the summary at this point.
Yeah,
no, we would
me and Bill would be sitting back with popcorn.
Actually, no. Randy runs the summary with an iron fist, so we would be past the summary.
Yeah,
I am summary Nazi.
Me and Bill would be sitting back with popcorn, just listening. We wouldn't care anymore. We'd just be listening to you fight.
You realize, of course, this means that you are going to challenge me in the upcoming season or specials or something. I'm actually going to get a stopwatch, and I am going to have the most brief, succinct summaries possible.
See, what's interesting is when you guys actually do summaries, you like to put in more detail in the summary than I would consider actually to be part of the summary. Like, you guys usually have the summary run.
I try to slim things down, and then people keep butting in and adding more content. It's like, no, you're supposed to be a summary!
You guys usually run actually about, I think, a 20-minute summary or so, whereas if it's not absolutely essential in getting from A to B, I tend to cut it out of mine, which is partially just because of the way I remember things, and partially just because I tend to save.
I'm actually trying for about 5 minutes. Is my goal.
Again, I try to do quick summaries, and then people would keep butting in and adding this and adding that. I'm like, no,
maybe we should discuss this when we're not recording.
But yeah. But that was like last half season ago. Was the biggest problem I had with that, but yeah. This thing.
So, yeah. 1.67, not the best episode, not Moffat's greatest outing. And another thing that drags it down that I didn't mention up till now is the fact that this is not a finale.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lead-in to the special. And really, if you're going to have it be a lead-in, don't call it a finale. The special was not given part of the season budget. It was given its own specialty budget. And I think when the BBC gave it to them, they were expecting it to be a standalone episode without a lead-in. and they're not getting that. And it really should have been a separate episode.
Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, I don't think you're going to be able to watch the special. Well, it's either going to be one of two things. Either the ending of this episode is going to be never mentioned again ever in the whole history of Doctor Who, or you will not be able to watch the 50th special without having watched all of Series 7 first.
And that'll basically come out with people going, Moffat, you jackass. And, of course, the fact is that he may not actually finish the special. It may lead into the Christmas episode.
Although, I gotta say, the one thing Moffat's been consistent with is his Christmas specials have generally been pretty standalone to the point where you could not watch any of them and it would make no difference regarding the plot.
The Snowmen.
Except for the Snowmen, which completely throws what I just said out the window because it was completely essential to the plot.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not type of smoking.
He did good with a Christmas story. He did good with his Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe one, which name I can't remember at the moment.
Doctor the...
Yeah, that's why I can't remember it. But they were standalone, but the Snowmen violated that little rule he made.
Yeah.
And, you know...
That said, you said a Christmas story instead of a Christmas Carol. If the Doctor had a special where he told someone they would shoot their eye out, that might be the most hilarious thing.
I will write that. I will write that one.
Well, it can't be worse than A Christmas Story 2, from what I've heard.
Yeah, from what I've heard and seen, yeah, good grief.
Alright, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for this one.
I think it does.
We'll be returning to our off-season classic, I think will probably be.
So what will we be doing?
Although we were discussing something else for next week, but I think we'll leave that as a secret until next week.
So, yeah.
Next week. So, yeah, we're going to talk about it after the show's done then.
Yep.
Well, I kind of implied that, but I wasn't trying to be so explicit about it.
So, catch you next time.
To everybody.
As it's our off season, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Why hasn't he used the screwdriver as a neuralizer yet? Because you know it must have that capability by now.
Good night, everybody!